Hello, I'm Dick Gardner. This cassette can change your life. Or, more directly, the message on this cassette can change your life. The cassette itself is simply a container worth approximately $2.50. It has a potential inside limited only to what is put in. So it is with the human capacity. Scientists tell us that our container, our body and brain, is worth roughly $1.78, chemically speaking, but that each of us has a potential inside limited only to what is put in. Recently in Memphis, I was speaking for a large insurance agency field force. I had with me 3 cassettes similar to this one that you're listening to. I declared my desire to auction those 3 tapes. The first one I described to be simply a blank cassette tape, capable of receiving and storing any information its new owner was desirous of transcribing. The bidding began at 5 cents and briskly edged upwards. The cassette sold for $2.45 a few minutes later. The second cassette I offered that day I described as having the same container, the same potential as the first, identical in all regards but one. It had an 18-second message. The message simply contained the name, address, and telephone number of a man who wanted to buy $50,000 worth of whole life insurance. What was I bid for this? The bidding started out. $5, $8, $15, $19. Then from the back of the room, $100, boomed a voice so forceful that all the other bidders dropped out. My second cassette sold for almost 45 times as much as the first, and it was identical to the first, except for 18 seconds. Then I held up the third and last cassette, and explained that this cassette wasn't blank, nor did it have the name of a specific buyer, but rather it had the description of how and where to find thousands of potential buyers, a roadmap, as it were, to success. How much am I bid for this cassette? Much to my amazement, an atmosphere of hesitation enveloped the group. No one leaped to his feet, as I had expected, to wrest the tape from me. My selling job had just begun. I really had to sell the value of that tape. After 10 to 12 minutes, the manager, able to contain himself no longer, somewhat angrily shouted, "What's wrong with you men anyway? Why aren't you anxious to buy this, the best tape?" One agent responded and summed it up for all the men. He said, "I don't believe it'd really help me." Besides, he said, trying to justify his answer, if it was that good, he wouldn't be willing to sell it anyway. You see, the man simply didn't believe. Because he couldn't see the end results, he didn't choose to start out on the journey. Had I been able to take that group of men outside to the street in front of their building and place $50,000 at the end of one of the white stripes on the road, give them a box of Brillo pads and told them as soon as the white line was gone they got the 50 grand, they would have physically gotten on hands and knees and scrubbed away. I'm convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that the major reason most people aren't successful in their lives is simply they don't believe. If they can't see it, touch it, taste it, or smell it, it can't and won't exist for them. We must come to the altar of life as little children. But how do people believe? They can believe through faith, like a child, or, for most people, seeing is believing. With the advantageous growth of cassette tapes, you can literally see through your ears. You can be exposed to examples and illustrations experienced by other people, and thus gain additional viewpoints heretofore impossible to have. I once heard it said that one grows tall in the shadow of greatness, and so true it is. Our desire and abilities, coupled with those examples of greatness learned from other people, make up our template of what we will become. When David Serrato, president of Motivation Recordings, explained his idea of making motivation more meaningful for millions, I immediately agreed with the concept. You see, for too long, great ideas, motivational messages, or inspirational instruction have been secretly shared behind corporate conference doors, in millionaires' club meetings, or in vacation wonderlands at congresses and seminars. To my knowledge, no one has approached success from a Sears Roebuck point of view. By that I mean success for everyone. And remember, in America, all men were created equal in opportunity, and consequently should have the opportunity of these success ideas. The ideas in this cassette are from the greatest minds in the free enterprise system, and are meant for you. Yes, this cassette could well be a roadmap to success, a primer of elementary success concepts. Primer idea number 1 was given to me by Paul Harvey in the Biltmore Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1964. After our sales congress there, I asked Paul what I've asked all the great men I've met, simply, what do you consider to be the secret of success? With no hesitation, he said, always remember, Dick, that success is not measured by how far up you go in life, but rather by how far back you bounce when you're down. You see, he continued, anyone can go up once, but I'm convinced there is no power on earth which can keep a first-class man down or hold a fourth-class man up. And that one controllable factor in success is that those who deserve it get up when they fall down. I've never forgotten that. Almost every great person I know displays this characteristic to persevere and persist. I'm reminded of the statement that if you'll always reach for the stars, you'll never come up with a handful of mud. And Paul Harvey said something else that day that needs to be mentioned. He said, success is never measured by how much aggravation you can dish out, but rather by how much aggravation you can take. Wow! To be able to experience all things and at the same time to create only that which others can experience easily will always be a worthy goal to emulate. I hope you're not thinking you have to be perfect to be able to do that, because you obviously don't. You and I can improve. We can do more of these things to a larger degree than we've done them in the past. Oh, I know, some of you feel you're handicapped, and you are. But consider primer idea number 2. Everyone is handicapped. To be handicapped is normal, but to do nothing because of it is copping out. That's self-imposed failure. Everyone can do something. Success is measured more by your efficiency than by your blessings. In the book People in Quandaries, Wendell Johnson said, on human levels, the average is too much to expect of some individuals under some conditions, and too little to expect of other individuals under other conditions. Such a person as Helen Keller, for example, was medically wanting, socially limited, legally restricted, but highly normal or efficient from the standpoint of what she had to work with in the conditions under which she had to work. On the other hand, a social matron with a college degree who does no particularly useful work, collects matchbooks and patronizes palm readers, is by virtue of these facts statistically, socially, medically, and legally within the normal range, but from a success point of view, she's functioning far below what could be reasonably expected of her. Success is more the relationship between your demonstrated and your potential efficiency. Success in life is not determined by being dealt a good hand, but rather by playing the hand you were dealt to the best of your ability. Charlie Boswell proves that. Charlie's an insurance man in Birmingham. He plays golf, and he's very good at it. He shot par many times, despite the fact he's totally blind. He never played when he was sighted. After his accident, he decided to learn. The golf instructor taught him how to groove a swing. Eventually, a ball was placed in his swing path, and Charlie would hit it. Someone asked him if it wasn't discouraging not to be able to see where the ball went. Charlie said, nah. If it slices or hooks or goes in a trap, I can't tell. All I know is I have to walk to get to it, and that's a success to me. On the green, Charlie would feel the undulations with his hands. He was literally seeing the green through his fingers. His caddy taps the back of the cup with a steel pin. Charlie lines up his putt, coordinates the sonics with his tactile information, putts. The ball takes the curve and goes plunk, right in the cup. Charlie Boswell, like Pete Gray, like FDR, like Beethoven, like Helen Keller, the list is endless, learned to cope with their handicaps rather than cop out because of them. Your handicaps may be nowhere near as severe, but always remember, to be handicapped in some regard is normal. To do nothing about it is copping out. Too many of us go to the grave with our music still in us. People who feel they have no music in them need only a sense of proportion, enabling them to recognize their liabilities in a proper relation to their assets. The only lame boys who are pathetic are the ones who have not learned to walk as well as they can, or who have been taught to envy anyone who can walk better than they do. They're the ones who do not realize how many things can be done with imperfect legs, or without legs at all. They're those who have somehow acquired the preposterous notion that if they can't dance or win a foot race, they are of no use in this world. Many so-called handicapped people are not really handicapped. They are just different. By taking account wisely of the difference that the difference makes, most of them would undoubtedly discover that in any fundamental sense, it makes very little difference indeed. As Ralph Waldo Emerson's squirrel said to the mountain, "If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut." Are you handicapped if you're relatively ignorant of the geography of Uruguay? If you're unschooled in algebra? Or you cannot name the muscles in your back? You are, from somebody's point of view. Who isn't handicapped from somebody's point of view? It's the point of view that matters. The German poet Heine wrote some of the finest works when he was a relatively helpless invalid. Franklin Delano Roosevelt ruled a nation from a wheelchair. Pete Gray played Major League Baseball with but one arm. Clifford Beers emerged from a mental hospital to establish the National Committee for Mental Hygiene and to instigate some of the most significant social and medical reforms that have ever been established. Just what is a handicap, anyway? Everyone can do something that's worthy. The fact remains, as George D. Stoddard has so aptly pointed out, that we can very often make a silk purse out of what we thought was a sow's ear. Primer idea number 3. Be happy you have problems. When I first heard Dr. Norman Vincent Peale say this, I thought he was crazy. But the wisdom contained therein becomes more evident with every passing day. Problems are the abrasive and crucible that make us strong. God doesn't give us problems to defeat us and knock us down, but rather he allows them to help build us up. We have deluded ourselves into thinking that a worry-free, tensionless state of being is desirable, when in reality, in this risky world, there's no such thing as total security or an absence of tension.
This concludes Side 1. Now please fast forward the cassette to the end, turn it over, and you'll be ready for Side 2.